No job is safer than a government job, right? Well, not anymore. Not in the United States, anyway. The federal government is poised to eliminate hundreds of thousands of jobs from its payroll. A, quote, large-scale reduction in force. As Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson noted in her blistering dissent from a Supreme Court order that allowed the layoffs to move forward, this kind of job loss causes significant harm. Job loss is often psychologically traumatic and economically devastating. Federal workers who lose their jobs will suffer now and in the future, even if they prevail in court in the end. But it's not only the affected workers or even their colleagues who survive the layoffs who will suffer. It's all of us. Jackson explains that mass reductions in the government workforce will jeopardize programs that impact all of us. Food safety, environmental protections, and disaster relief, to name just a few. The reduction in force is a blow to our collective security. Poignantly, Jackson writes, quote, what one person or president might call bureaucratic bloat is a farmer's prospect for a healthy crop, a coal miner's chance to breathe free from black lung, or a preschooler's opportunity to learn in a safe environment. I'm paying special attention to the fight over government jobs, or as the administration might put it, bloat and inefficiency, because it's part of a more comprehensive narrative project, one that shapes how we think and talk about work, and therefore think and talk about who we are and how we fit into society. Questioning the narrative that government workers are lazy or that bureaucracy is bloated and unnecessary is one way to question the narratives we perpetuate in our own work lives. I'm Tara McMullen, and this is What Works, the show that rethinks work, business, and leadership for the 21st century economy. Now, questioning narratives about work is pretty central to my project here. So today, I want to take a closer look at how we think about government work, what that tells us about how we conceive of our own work, and how insecurity is the thread that ties it all together. Plus, I've got some provocative questions for examining the story you tell yourself about your goals. Let's dive in. In a recent episode of Cautionary Tales, Tim Hartford asked best-selling author Michael Lewis about his interest in government workers, such as those profiled in his new collection, Who is Government? Lewis explains that these are people who are solving real problems and addressing pressing needs while seemingly lacking the desire for fame or fortune one might expect from their accomplishments. He then bemusingly adds that he's just not wired that way. He values recognition too much to do his work quietly.
One of the keys to a meaningful life is to find ways outside of yourself. Find ways to live for things other than yourself. These people put their finger on it right away. There are problems I can solve, and it will help others. And never mind how much I'm paid or whether I'm acknowledged for it. And I'm not wired to do that. I need more attention.
Now, as someone who also craves recognition for my work, I can understand his bewilderment. Contemporary culture conditions many of us to believe that fame and fortune are innate needs, and if not fame and fortune, at least recognition. Part of Lewis's fascination with government work has been inspired by what he calls the most interesting organization no one's ever heard of. This organization, the Partnership for Public Service, was founded by a government attorney turned businessman with the goal of attracting new talent to public service. Each year, the organization presents awards to government workers in recognition of their contributions to the public good.
Civil servants work in so many important areas to protect our health and safety. You are the embodiment of the best of government and the best our country has to offer.
When we work together as one, we can move mountains.
Megan, Allison, Sarah, and their team, they set up an opioid response program that provides funding for a wide array of opioid use prevention, treatment, and recovery services.
At their core, public servants are the preservers, the defenders and promoters of our democracy.
Most of the awards go to people who have solved, in Lewis's words, some extremely narrow, difficult problem that the U.S. government, in many cases only the U.S. government, has taken on. Max Stier, the president and CEO of the Partnership for Public Service, told Lewis that there was, quote, no culture of recognition in government. We wanted to create a culture of recognition. Stier also seems bewildered by government workers' ability to do something incredible and simply move on to the next project. No need to pause and bask in the accolades. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think there's a universal need for recognition, but not the kind that Stier and Lewis are describing. We want to be able to recognize the ways we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves. We want to recognize our own skillfulness, creativity, and power. We want to recognize the direct line between our efforts and their impacts, no matter how great or small. In many ways, this recognition looks more like belonging than an award. We want recognition from others in as much as it allows us to augment and extend these qualities we desire in work. Or, as Leslie Knope, the dedicated public servant at the Center of Parks and Recreation, put it,
and soon, a new unknown challenge awaits me, which, to me, even now, is thrilling, because I love the work. Not to say that public service isn't sexy,
because it definitely is.
But that's not why we do it. We do it because we get the chance to work hard at work worth doing, alongside a team of people who we love.
The Partnership for Public Service makes the same mistake that many advocacy groups founded by wealthy benefactors often do, assuming that the public sector should operate more like the private sector. If private sector workers seem motivated by awards and bonuses and recognition, then public sector workers would probably benefit from the same. But what if being motivated by accolades is a symptom of a problem and not a solution to one? Lewis claims he is not wired like these people who eschew recognition for their accomplishments. But what if it's not a question of wiring? What if the desire for recognition is a product of private sector work itself? Fame, fortune, and of course, less extreme forms of recognition are, after all, tools for imperfectly avoiding insecurity. Those who seek them are perhaps, deep down, less driven by a desire to be famous or amass a fortune than by the universal need for safety and security. While fame and fortune certainly come with their own unique risks, in a society built on spectacle and driven by consumption, these outcomes do a lot to provide cover to those who attain them. Of course, fame and fortune aren't the only things we chase in the name of security. Others might crave the exact opposite, anonymity and meager self-sufficiency. Some prefer hierarchical family structures or brute force power. Any and all of these paths to something like security can play out in our work, from our day-to-day activities to our career choices. We've all heard the question from guidance counselors or career coaches, what would you do if money were no object? Ideally, the question helps one set aside the disparity in compensation between various career paths and consider what they really want to do for work. And fair enough. Money here is actually an insufficient proxy for security. And to my mind, the question, what would you do if security were no object, is a fundamentally different question. I might go even further and ask, What else would you need in life if security were no object? If you had a reliable way to pay the rent, procure nutritious and delicious food, clothe yourself, educate your family, how else would you augment your life? How would you fill your time, your attention, your care? It's also worth considering the activities or goals we pursue in the name of security. Fame, fortune, recognition, sure, but maybe also continuing to post to a social media platform you despise because it seems like a safety net. Or people-pleasing your colleagues because even constructive conflict feels like a risk. Or avoiding the doctor's office or the mechanic because discovering that there's a problem seems like a bigger threat to your security than simply ignoring the possibility. What are you currently doing in the name of security that isn't making you more secure? What might you pursue instead with that time and energy that would add to your security? Perhaps it's not some inborn personality quirk that makes civil servants into unexpected heroes of the public good, but simply the material reality of being paid enough, with enough time off, and enough continuity from day to day that they have the personal bandwidth to devote themselves to significant, if not flashy, projects. Because they can worry less about taking care of themselves as individuals, they are free to focus on taking care of us as a whole and solve problems that threaten our collective security. It's little wonder that a political economy defined by insecurity and inequality would engender attention-seeking neuroses or fixations on wealth. It's little wonder that this political economy produces people who wear identities like overachiever and hustler as a badge of honor. External validation and recognition seem essential to our well-being because they serve as key performance indicators that help us measure our distance from insecurity. We fear failure and setbacks because, for many of us, they are existential threats. In this paradigm, government workers are specters of our own insecurity. They represent the needs we have that can only be addressed collectively. In them, we see the potential of the commons, the possibility for more meaningful work, the promise of more equitable compensation and advancement. Conservative politicians and pundits attack government workers so that we lose sight of what could be and focus on what we, that is, you and I as individuals, might lose. They craft a narrative that makes government workers the enemy, the antithesis of the hardworking American. In turn, we come to see government work as indulgent and unnecessary. Their salaries are too high, their jobs too stable, benefits too luxurious, schedules too accommodating. We end up grateful for the opposite. If not in fact, at least in metaphor. We are reduced in force. Not only does this narrative disrupt the process of building solidarity, but it also puts the squeeze on all of us. Mass layoffs generate surplus labor, increasing competition for limited jobs, and so lowering the bar on compensation and working conditions. Small business owners and the self-employed aren't insulated from these consequences. Contracts are harder to win. Attention is harder to earn. Project rates stagnate. As Astra Taylor observes in The Age of Insecurity, insecurity isn't limited to people experiencing poverty or the working class. It's not limited to those who earn less than the median salary or work in declining industries. Having enough money to pay the bills doesn't automatically ease the burden of insecurity, much less eliminate it. Further, Taylor argues that insecurity is universal. None of us gets by on our own. Our collective condition is why she argues for an ethics of insecurity that would redirect our attention away from individual struggles for security and toward the collective work of achieving security for all of us. And yes, that means building movements, advocating for policy change, and rebuilding a public infrastructure of care. But an ethics of insecurity can and should play out in our daily work lives too. Job performance is a team effort. Solo entrepreneurship gives way to collaborative entrepreneurship. Self-promotion wanes and community promotion waxes.
But the security we need is the security of caring for each other, of building bonds of solidarity, of recognizing our shared vulnerability, our shared insecurities, and finding a kind of collaborative, cooperative, sustainable form of security that is in direct opposition to this defensive, individualistic, toxic form of security.
Individually, we are reduced in force, but together, we support each other in strength. In Mythocracy, literature and media scholar Yves Sitton describes how narratives channel the flow of power. By amplifying or suppressing certain narratives, institutions, quote, structure social life insofar as they manage to collect and distribute flows of desires and beliefs through relatively stable structures. An institution can reduce the force of its constituents by crafting and distributing a story that feeds preferred scripts to everyone who hears it. Literally, we learn phrases like good enough for government work and
the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
But we also learn the disposition, expectations, and behaviors of someone who behaves as if that pacifying story is true. Thankfully, Sitton argues that this same trick can be and should be used by the public to imagine new futures, to reclaim our force. But the work of imagining new futures isn't a task for tomorrow. It's a task for the present, not only imagining, but also behaving as if it were true today. And to do that, we need to put our force behind questioning every assumption baked into the story we're currently living and working in. I believe that more of us are motivated by care and curiosity than fame, fortune, or flashy recognition. We fear losing each other more than we fear downward mobility or even financial ruin. We are motivated by, as Taylor puts it, an intrinsic desire to create, collaborate, and care for one another rather than the threat of duress. The question, what would you do if security were no object, isn't a mere conceptual provocation. It's a call to imagine how your life and work would be different in a society that believes all people have a right to stability, a right to meet their own needs or have them met. It's a call to measure security outside the narrow confines of money or attention. It's a reminder that the only true security comes from working toward a better future for all of us. Or perhaps it's time for businesses to operate more like the government. Today's episode was written, edited, and produced by me, Tara McMullen. What Works is a production of Yellow House Media, a boutique audio and video production studio that turns meaningful ideas into remarkable content. What Works is produced on the ancestral homeland of the Conestoga and Susquehannock people, and the Yellow House is located on the lands of the Salish and Kootenai peoples.